Okay, colleagues, please take your seats.
Değerli meslektaşlar,
We are to begin. You're very disciplined. No wonder. No, I think it's because of the sports. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your discipline. Dear colleagues, dear speakers, dear participants, I'm honored to open our inter-parliamentary committee meeting, which we are organizing on the occasion of the International Women's Day 2024. And I know it's the day before, but happy Women's Day and all the best to all women. Yes, bravo to you. This year, our meeting will be devoted to women in sport. We are pleased to have with us 20 members from European Union national parliaments and including also members from Turkey. I am pleased to welcome you all on this important occasion and to hear your contribution to this, our debate. Firstly, I would like to make a few practical announcements before we go to this important discussion. The event is organized in collaboration with the Directorate for Relations with National Parliaments, whom I want to thank for the cooperation. Interpretation is available in EU languages. I don't know whether it's in Turkish as well. I hope it is. Is it in Turkish too? Yes, it is. So very lucky Turkish colleagues. Where are you, by the way? The Turkish colleagues over there. Thank you for being with us. The meeting is web streamed, so people can watch us all around the globe. Please also note the time for interventions is limited. The clock will be displayed through the event. You will see it over my head in order to better monitor, of course, the time. I ask that you keep to allocated time. In order to ask for the floor, members of national parliaments need to fill in the speaking cards. Once given the floor, they need to process the speak button, which is in front of you. And the cards should be distributed and you should have it on the table. If this is not the case, please contact my colleague who is sitting on my far right. I don't like to use this name too often, but she's sitting on the far right. Colleague members from FAM, please raise your hand if you wish to take the floor. So my colleagues from the committee will raise the hand if they want to speak. Now, today's issue on the women in sport. Last year, when my colleagues and I were discussing possible topics for this year's of inter-parliamentary committee meeting, we quickly and without any doubts settled the topic on women in sport. We had a number of reasons for doing so, not just the upcoming Paris Olympics or recent European sports successes, which we are all proud of. Of course, always in our minds is the fact that sport has traditionally been seen as a male preserve, with women at first not being even allowed to participate and then later being steered to more feminative disciplines. It might surprise some to hear just how long this practice survived. And it was only in 1971 that women could play football in the UK's Football Association grounds, following a 50-year ban. Only in 1972 that women were allowed to run the Boston Marathon, the famous one, after a woman was forced to hide herself in the 1967 edition. Only in 1991 that all new sports in the Olympics had to have a women's event. And only in the 2012 Olympics did women compete in every discipline played. Imagine. And this is despite the crucial role sport has played in increasing women's rights from cycling, increasing women's physical and social mobility, to fighting for equal pay and prizes. For example, in tennis, with the campaigning of Billie Jean King, among others. Sport has certainly evolved over the years, with disciplines such as football, basketball, tennis, and others producing female household names. Yet we often say women football, and seldom men's football. I never heard, by the way. The default always seems masculine. While we should celebrate the progress and the successes, we must also consider the scandals and setbacks which occur at all levels and even on the public stage. Sexism and misogyny can be exacerbated by power structures and secrecy. Abuse can be verbal, emotional, physical, or sexual. Well-publicized scandals, such as the final of the Women's Football World Cup, marred by harassment, the US gymnastic abuse scandal, and others, are only the tip of the iceberg. The effect this may have on today's young girls is also worrying. Sport should be a part of an active, healthy lifestyle, which is why sportsmen and sportswomen are often held as role models. But can girls be encouraged into sports in the role models face such abuse? But we do not only consider the issue of women practicing sport. We must also pay attention to the governing structures to see how well women are represented there, and to coaching. And yes, there has been progress since, for example, 1981, when the first women were appointed to the International Olympic Committee. Yet even today, we are far, far from equality. Why does it matter, we might ask? We know that we need a certain crucial mass in order for progress to be made. Also for athletes to transition into coaches and sports administrators, like their male counterparts. Again, pay and status play a role here. But who could forget the role when Andy Murray, the British male tennis player, in 2014 appointed Amélie Mauresmo as his coach? For women, to be coached by a man is normal. But for men, to be coached by women? Even today, examples are few and far, far between. I do not want to be too negative. In the run-up to the 2024 Paris Olympic Games, we turn to the Olympic Charter, which considers the practice of sport to be a human right, listing this as one of the fundamental principles of Olympism. The values of sportsmanship, teamwork, leadership, solidarity through sport, as well as social responsibility throughout sport, are ones which not only align with the European Union motto of United in Diversity, but are respected worldwide. Today, we will have the opportunity to hear from and debate with prominent, famous, honorable sportswomen, whom I'm proud to host today, who will tell us in their own words about their concerns, triumphs, and campaigning, great inspiration and great joy. I'm hopeful that this inter-parliamentary committee meeting on the occasion of the International Women's Day 2024 will explore ways in which sport can be a driver for gender equality, how we can better serve our future sportswomen, and indeed all citizens, in ensuring that the challenges can be met. The European Parliament, the House of European Democracy, representing the second democracy by population in the world, has consistently advocated for more gender equality in sport, underlining the role of sport plays in our society. I am very happy and proud to see you here today and encourage your active participation, which I'm sure will be a case. And now, to kick off our today's proceedings, we have a short video message from our female president of the European Parliament, our leader, Roberta Metsola, who unfortunately cannot be here in person since she is busy in her visit in Romania, who has a very important video message for all of us. Let's listen to the President of European Parliament, Roberta Metsola.
Come together today not only as representatives of our respective parliaments, but also as champions of progress and equality, to address a fundamental issue, the empowerment of women in sport. Because women in sport still have to fight to ensure that their achievements are recognized on an equal footing and with equal pay and status as their male counterparts. Certain sports are typically seen as a man's world, but my point is that it is her game too. We need to do more. It is our role as legislators to play our part to break down barriers, challenge stereotypes, and create pathways for women to excel, not just on the field or the court, but in every aspect of their sporting careers. This meeting serves as a platform for dialogue, cooperation, and action. It is an opportunity to share insights, best practices, and innovative solutions to build a future where every woman and girl has the chance to pursue her sporting ambition without limits. I will pick up the baton next week in the European Parliament's plenary celebration of International Women's Day. Thank you for your commitment, because we need more women in sports and more female role models everywhere too.
Thank you very much to President Metsola and her message. And now I will have honor to also present you a video message from Katarzyna Kotula, who is first in the history of Poland Minister for Equality. She's from my home country, Poland, who unfortunately had to stay in Poland at the last minute for the very important vote on the liberalization of abortion. But we have, as I said, a video message. And Katarzyna Kotula, she was also a sportswoman. She's still a sportswoman. She was a professional player, and she also witnessed sexual harassment when she was a sports player. So her video message is also a special one in the context we will be discussing today. And I'm very proud to present now you the video from the Minister for Equality of Poland, Katarzyna Kotula.
Hello, my name is Katarzyna Kotula and I am the new Minister of Equality from Poland. I want to greet you from Poland today and say that unfortunately I cannot be physically present during today's meeting, but I have some few important words that I want to say to you. I want to thank Robert Biedroń, the chair of the FEM committee, for inviting me, and I want to thank all the committee members for taking on the agenda a very important topic, which is violence in sports and sexual abuse in sports. You have probably read the new UN report, which states that 25% of children, of females, and 11% of males have experienced a form of sexual abuse at least once as a child in sport. More than a year ago, I have publicly told my personal story of having experienced sexual abuse in sports. As a teenager, I was a professional tennis player and I was sexually abused by my former coach. And it was a difficult experience to talk about it publicly, but at the same time I was aware of the fact that all my colleagues from my teenage years, waiting for an opportunity to talk about what has happened more than 30 years ago to us. The story went public and the media wrote about it, and as it happens in many such cases, it started a national debate. It started a national debate about the safety of children in sports, about sexual abuse of professional athletes, coaches, therapists, and all those who are engaged in professional and non-professional sports. I believe that the topic of sexual abuse and violence in sports and combating and eliminating violence against women in sports is important to be on every national agenda, also to be a big topic on the European level. The famous story, which was covered by the media, of Larry Nassar, a therapist of more than 100 gymnasts who have experienced sexual abuse, started a national debate in the United States. Many good legislative proposals have been put on the table, and many new tools and measures have been given to coaches, to managers of sports club and those involved in sports and organization of professional and unprofessional sports in the United States. I believe that what is necessary is education. And when I say education, I mean workshops, all those anti-discrimination measures that have to be made obligatory within the world of sports in every nation. In Poland, we have put a proposal going broadly for the safety of children in schools, but also in sports clubs, so new standards of protecting children have been implemented, and on the 15th of February they started to be proceeded in schools. The process of implementing those new standards is also a good way to talk with children, to talk with athletes, to talk with coaches, and to develop the best measures to guarantee the safety of children in sports. We need to implement new measures to stop sexual, physical, mental, and emotional abuses. We need to do everything to prevent it from happening now and in the future. We need strong policies to prevent child and adult abuse in professional and non-professional sports. I wish you good talks on the committee today, and I want to stress out that I am open for cooperation with anybody who wants to work on good measures and good solutions and the necessary legislation that would combat successfully violence against children and sexual abuse concerning children and adults, professional and unprofessional athletes, and all those persons engaged in professional and non-professional sports. Greetings from Poland.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Minister for her important message. And with this, we will go into the debate with our distinguished guest, the debate you probably very much awaited, and you come far away from to hear our guests who are here present. We are very lucky to have you here in present. We have, as I said, 4 distinguished guests representing whole spectrum of the debate. Let me just present shortly them before I give them the floor. So on my left, the first one, I have Pia Sundhage, who is a Swedish former football player and coach. Thank you very much for being with us. Ms. Sundhage has had a stellar career as a football player and a manager. As I said, she retired as the top scorer of the Swedish team and transitioned into management, taking the US, Sweden, and Brazil to the Women's World Cup. A great achievement. She steered the US team to 2 gold medals in 2008 and 2012. And in 2012, she was voted listen, the best women coach in the 2012 FIFA Awards. Ms. Sundhage is now leading Switzerland team, which will contest the 2025 European Championship on home ground. Congratulations and thank you very much for being with us. Very impressive. And now on my right, I have Charline Van Snick. She feels at home because she's from Belgium. Charline Van Snick, hailing from here, has won countless medals on the world and European stage in her chosen field of judoka, including bronze at the Olympics and the World Championships and the gold at the European. Ms. Van Snick recently announced her retirement with an intent to carry on fighting, but this time against physical, sexual, psychological violence and domestic violence. So still very active and present. Thank you very much. It's our honor to have you with us, and congratulations for your achievements. Thank you for being with us. Big applause, I think, also she deserves. And now we have our colleague from the Council of Europe, the institution which we very appreciate in the field of, we will discuss, the Council of Europe has delivered a lot on women in sport. We have Etilda Gionai, Vice Chair on Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe Committee on Equality and Non-Discrimination, which I was once a member of long time ago, and General Rapporteur, what is very important for us, General Rapporteur on Violence Against Women in the Assembly. Thank you very much for being with us today, colleague. And on my left, closer to us, I have Caroline Schiele, our great friend, a leader, a director of European Institute of Gender Equality, the extremely important institute for Europe and for the world, delivering a lot of information which we use in national parliaments, in European Parliament, to assess the situation of women, the level of gender equality. And I don't know if you have heard recently, EIGE has announced that we need 60 years to achieve gender equality in European Union. It's estimated that we sooner land on Mars than we achieve gender equality in European Union. This is a terrible message we heard from EIGE, but thanks to EIGE, we can hear this message and spread the voice over. So thank you very much, Director, for being with us. We really appreciate your work and your expertise also in this field. Thank you. So without delay, I will give now the floor to our heroes here, Pia Sundhage, Swedish former football player and coach. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Ladies and
Hvala, dame I gospodo, časni gosti I pobornici jednakosti.
honor International Women's Day, I am reminded of the remarkable journey of the women in football. My name is Pia Sundhage, and throughout my career, as both as a player and a coach, I have witnessed firsthand the challenges and triumphs of female football players. From my early days growing up in a small Swedish town called Ulricehamn, where there was no such a thing as girls or women football, to my time as the head coach of women's national football teams like the United States, Sweden, Brazil, and now Switzerland. I had the honor of leading some of the world's biggest stars, great role models, goal scorers like Abby Wambach, Lotta Schelin, and Marta. I've seen the power of sports in the lives of women and girls. But make no mistakes, the road to the equality has not been easy. Women in football have for a long time been fighting for our rights to play football, but also to ensure that our achievements are recognized. When we enter the football pitch, we constantly breaking down stereotypes that are typically seen as a man's world, and we are change the attitude. I have faced my fair shares of obstacles and doubters along the way. When I was a little girl, I loved the ball. I loved what the ball could do to me and what I could do with the ball, and it challenged me in a joyful way. People back then expected me to toss the ball because I was a girl. But I loved to strike the ball with my feet. I played with the boys, and passion for the game led me to temporarily become a boy called Pelle, only to be able to play. I was different, and it was okay back then. Today, I am an old woman, and my feet and the ball still take me to many different cultures, different places in the world, give me confidence, and I continue to make friends. The ball is one of my best friends, and it reminds me to show respect wherever I go. Throughout my career, I have been fortunate to witness the incredible progress that women have made in the world of football. From the historic victories on the field to the groundbreaking achievements off the field, women have continued to defy expectations and rewrite the script of what it means to be an athlete. But let us not forget that the fight for equality is far from over. Women still face barriers in access to resources, equal treatments, good support, status, and respect. Female athletes are often undervalued and underrepresented in the media, and the disparity in pay, investment between men's and women's sports remain glaringly apparent. Abuse scandals like the one at the Women's Cup final, World Cup final, show that there is still some work in front of us. Instead of talking about brilliant sporting performance, unfortunately, the big talking point was the abuse during the medal ceremony. That is sad. And that is one reason why it's more important than ever that we become together to inspire inclusion, show respect, and create a more equitable playing field for all. In a football match, we make a lot of decisions. We have the same goal, and we do it together. I hope you people, you who have the power to make decisions off the pitch, politics, for the society, that you look into the issues women in sports are fighting, and as well celebrate as a goal scorer, and acknowledge the measures taken and progress made. You can do it. You have to do it as a politics. Now, as a coach of Swiss football national team women, one of my hope and excitement in the upcoming Women Euro 2025, set to be hosted in Switzerland. This prestigious tournament not only showcases the incredible talent and skill of female players, but also provides a platform to amplify their voices and inspire the next generation. And as we celebrate International Women's Day, let us recommit ourselves to the cause of gender equality in sport and beyond. Together, men and women, we should build a world where every woman and girl have the opportunity to shine, both on and off the field. So let us embrace the fact that times and they are changing. Thank you.
Wow. I'm speechless. That was something. Thank you very much for your inspiration, Ms. Sundhage. And again, your leadership also in your speech. We heard it. It was so strong. And the power of sports, I could feel that, the one you talk about. Thank you very much for being with us. Great inspirations. And I'm sure many girls hearing your voice feel very much inspired, and they can believe they can make a change. And it's a great power you have. Thank you for that. Charline Van Snick, yes, sorry. The floor is yours now. The Belgian judoka and Olympian, as I said, now will have the floor. Can't wait to hear you.
Thank you. It's Van Snick.
Van Snick.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Mesdames et messieurs les députés.
Members of the European Parliament and national parliaments, dear guests, I'm proud and honoured to be here today as a professional sportswoman, but also as a campaigner for fairer sport. During my career, I've faced sporting challenges and also have had to fight sexist and sexual violence. And this is why I'd like to share with you today a reality which is often hidden behind the glamour of medals and podiums. For me, sport was always a dream, a passion, but also an escape. For many young people like me, sport is a refuge, a place where we can channel our energy, our ambition, and our determination. But behind that dream, often the reality is quite dark. I have been subjected to underhand pressure, to constant humiliation, and even serious violence. Female athletes are often isolated, naive, and they're victims because they are close to their coaches who wield unlimited power. The effects of this violence are dramatic. They leave invisible but profound scars on the souls of those who are subjected to it. An obsession with success at all costs and intimidation and authority, psychological holds, all of this normalizes pain and keeps athletes in a state of permanent submission. A recent study funded by the EU shows that three-quarters of children who play sport have been victims of psychological or physical violence. And 80% in Belgium. Half of these are serious forms of violence. And European sports leaders have been criticised for their lack of action in the face of this tragedy. The figures are alarming. Behind these gleaming medals and pastimes and the values that are being conveyed, there are stories of suffering and silence. Despite efforts to raise awareness, specific measures have not been taken, and allowing those with power to dominate. We need to move towards a fairer and more respectful society. There's an urgent need to protect children, our children, your children. Now, when it comes to the Olympic Games in Paris this year, will they be based on equality? Well, there will be as many women competing as men in Paris 2024, and that shows there's been significant progress towards gender parity in sport. Recent IOC initiatives, including the creation of mixed events, represent significant progress on this path. For example, in the mixed judo team, we now have the same amount of combat time for men and women, but their challenges do remain. For example, strict rules for the IOC limit athletes' ability to defend their beliefs openly. This restriction raises questions about the fundamental right of athletes to express their views and support causes which are in line with Olympic values. There is also still inequalities in the recognition and support for female athletes. Often It's about when it talks about the choice of clothes, media coverage, budgets, the amount of women in decision-making roles, medical teams, refugees, access to infrastructure, public places, pay. It's a very long list. In April 2021, we called on our government via an open letter signed by around 50 figures in Belgian sport to take specific measures to promote equality. Together, we need to create a sporting environment and a world which is fair, which is inclusive and respects all genders. And these measures are long overdue. Now I'd like to focus on a particularly important issue, the sex verification tests. Too often, women are pigeonholed when they obtain exceptional results. Some are subjected to invasive and humiliating tests, even medical treatment when they are in perfect health. Operations, sometimes without their consent. There's also the removal of their clitoris in order, supposedly, to reduce the rate of testosterone. And this is because they do not simply correspond to the preconceived notions of what a woman should be. This binary categorization of men and women does not reflect the complexity of biological reality. There are different types of constitutions, more or less male or female, depending on chromosomes, sex organs, genitals, and hormones. This is a spectrum. However, it's women, in particularly black women, who suffer the most from this rigid and discriminatory categorization. Those that are different are scrutinized, and their performance is called into question because they are deemed to not be feminine enough. This culture of suspicion and control reinforces inequalities and prejudices. We need to end these discriminatory practices, and these sex verification tests are in breach of the physical and mental integrity of women in sport. In addition to these challenges, it's also essential that we create an independent sports federation body, a body which is impartial and reactive and able to conduct comprehensive inquiries and impose harsh sanctions when there is abuse or violence in sport. And this body needs to be able to investigate, impose sanctions, and also work on prevention in order to ensure the protection of rights and dignity for all athletes without exception. Currently, we often reach an impasse where victims are in a situation where it's their words against others. We need to be able to act effectively. Another issue is media coverage. We can see there is real enthusiasm when female sports are broadcast. But in Belgium, for example, only 9% of audiovisual media programs represent women. And this is when 50% of our Olympic team are women. Too often, women are reduced to their physical appearance, their clothes, or their private lives, rather than their sport performance. Access to sport for women is a key public health issue. Sport is beneficial for physical and mental health. Women also play a key role as role models in inspiring future generations and promoting values such as equality, respect, and diversity. The more female athletes there are, the more talent there will be, the more the overall level will increase, the more sponsors will be interested, and the more income there will be. It benefits everybody, from amateurs right through to professionals. Now, against this backdrop, I'd like to show a video that was issued in 2020, and this covers several women who talk about everyday sexism and also more extreme violence, and too many women have identified themselves with this. I'd like to start the video now, please.
On m'a toujours traité.
I was always treated like a tomboy. You are strong for a girl. I'm a mum, so people ask me why I do such a physically demanding sport. I like cooking and judo just like my mum. I avoid jogging alone for my own safety. Leggings must have been invented by a rapist. This is what one sportsman said to his teammates. One brand refused to sponsor me because I didn't want to do sexy photographs with their equipment. The national coach did not like the fact that we were two women, a couple of two women. He harassed us and then dropped us from the team. When I reached puberty, my parents banned me from playing a contact sport. I filed a complaint against a coach for sexual and moral harassment. My federation protected him. I was 15 years old. I was a high-level female athlete. The fitness coach made me his mistress. He was married and a father. My federation turned a blind eye. We were a couple in the same team. I left her. He strangled me at a sports event. The coach covered up for him. For him, sport is not for women. He tore up my passport and he ruined my competition.
Merci.
Thank you very much. It's always very moving to see this again each time it's broadcast. But I have experienced that myself, and it is still very current. I'd now like to conclude. I call on you, members of the European Parliament, to take specific measures to combat sexist violence in sport by supporting initiative of those who are active on the ground. We need to end this culture of impunity, protect victims, and punish the perpetrators. Now, even though we can see there is progress and a desire for change, things are not happening quickly enough, and we don't have sufficient ambition. We need to create a world in sport where all individuals can flourish without fear, without violence, but with dignity and respect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Van Snick, for your intervention, an eye-opener for many of us. And an inspiration, and also a message for legislators. It's a great opportunity today that we can hear your sportswomen voice as legislators, decision makers, on what we can do better to protect and support women in sports. With this, we will move further to our colleague from Council of Europe. As I said, great body, great organization. We all belong as member states. Etilda Gionai, first Vice Chair of the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe Committee on Equality and Non-Discrimination, and General Rapporteur on Violence Against Women. Etilda, the floor is yours, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Biedron, esteemed participants. I'm deeply honored and pleased to be here for the first time in the capacity of the General Rapporteur for Violence Against Women of the Assembly of Council of Europe, but also as a member of Albanian Parliament. I thank you warmly for the invitation on the occasion of International Women's Day here in European Parliament, in your home, that we as Albanians eagerly anticipate in the near future, where we can proudly call it our home. As the Vice Chair of European Affairs Committee in my own country, in Albanian Parliament, I can affirm that we as Albanians have demonstrated with determination, courage, and political commitment that Europe cannot remain a merely dream for Albanians, but also ensuring the European standards be guaranteed in our country, paving the way to build Europe in Albania. Meantime, I truly believe that this event, organized by Committee on Women's Rights and Gender Equality, is a good example of inter-parliamentary cooperation between members of European Parliament and members of national parliaments, and across the two regional assemblies in Europe, which we should continue strengthening on in the months to come. I'm pleased to see members of the European Parliament and other colleagues from the Council coming together on this event, but not only. The unity of our political action is essential in supporting the empowerment of women and girls in all their diversity. It also serves to shed light on the necessary solutions in gender-aware policymaking, leading to greater access to decision-making, education, economic resources, healthcare, and sports. As General Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, I want to use this opportunity and express my appreciation for the ratification of the Istanbul Convention by EU last year, as well as by 22 member countries. This crucial step is a proof that the European Parliament trusts the standards set forth by the Council of Europe. Moreover, this shows the firm commitment to preventing and combating all forms of gender-based violence that also apply in the fields of sports. As the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe has underlined in his statement for 8th March this year, one of the key challenges to achieve gender equality by 2030 is the lack of political and financial investment in the policies and measures needed. This includes promoting gender equality and women's rights in all sectors and activity, including sports. We recognize that substantial progress has been made in recent years as regards gender equality and combating discrimination. But the world of sport is not yet free from violence, sexism, and gender discrimination. Inequalities in pay, treatment, access, and status between women and men in sports are still common in both professional and non-professional sport. In October 2022, PACE adopted the resolution on the fight for a level playing field, ending discrimination against women in the world of sport. The resolution asks European states to take measures on preventing and combating sexism and gender stereotypes, promoting inclusive and non-discriminatory media coverage of sporting events. It is important to address the multiplied discrimination that women in sports face, considering that not all women get the same opportunities and treatment. Women from marginalized groups, including LGBTI women, women with disabilities, migrant women, women with diverse religious affiliation face more barriers than the others. I'm glad to mention here that in January this year, it's launched a project, a joint project from EU and Council of Europe that aim to ensure that the relative invisibility of women in sports and the ongoing lack of awareness about gender imbalance in sport and related issues are brought clearly to the forefront. And this project is implemented in 20 countries. And all the gathering information and data will be launched in October of this year. And really, I'm glad to see this project coming, implemented together in order that we can have some identified issues and problems that we can better address even as decision makers. It is important to achieve gender equality in sports, and it's crucial to embrace a top-down approach, recognizing the pivotal role of female role models in sports and ensuring women's adequate representation in sport decision-making bodies. We must acknowledge that advancing gender equality in sports requires a collaborative and inclusive efforts, where both men and women are pivotal in preventing and addressing discrimination. All stakeholders, including sport federations, must intensify efforts to prevent and to detect all forms of violence and ensure the prosecution of perpetrators with unwavering support for survivors as fundamental component. Women's rights in all domains, including sports, lie at the core of human rights and democracy. Preventing and addressing gender-based violence globally is a matter of human rights, is a matter of justice, of equity and equality. It entails removing barriers that discourage women and girls from realizing their full potential, thus it's more challenging for them to thrive. Promoting the empowerment of women in all their diversity is a top priority even on my agenda as General Rapporteur, alongside efforts to prevent all forms of violence against women. In June, Albania will co-host the meeting of EGA Committee and the Parliamentary Network for Women Free of Violence. And during this event, the side session will be specifically address the critical issue of psychological and cyber violence affecting all women, including even women in sports. And this session will provide an opportunity for all actors to exchange perspective and share best practices in combating these common challenges. As I conclude, I am reminded the powerful words of the former judge of the Supreme Court in US, Ruth Ginsburg, who said, "Women belong in all places where decisions are being made." And this word summarizes the essence of our shared mission as decision makers to promote gender equality and empower women in all spheres of society. Let us join forces and efforts to build a more just, equitable, and inclusive society for all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Ms. Gionai, for your intervention and looking for synergies between our institutions. Indeed, in these times of multiple crises, we need to even more look for this cooperation than before. And that's why thank you for being with us and your initiatives on this in this matter. Now we will proceed to the European Institute for Gender Equality in Vilnius. Just to inform you, for those who might not know, beautiful Vilnius is hosting IGE with the director, Karin Schiele, who is in Brussels with us today. And the floor is yours, Director. And thank you very much again for being with us. As always, we can count on your expertise. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I must say that I quite like this panel for the following reason. As you say, my agency collects data and information on the state of play of gender equality in the European Union and the individual member states, but we should never forget that behind those data and that information, there's the stories of citizens, of women and men, boys and girls in the EU. And I think the testimonies that we have heard today from two great sportswomen also underline how important it is to also listen to such narratives and testimonies. My neighbor, Ms. Sundhage, already mentioned the Women's World Cup last summer. And what was striking in that case, and I'm sure you all remember this, that in first instance there was a bit of silence, and then suddenly the case exploded all over the place in the media. And the hashtag driving this online discourse was "C'est acabou," it's over. It's over. And to me and to my colleagues, because we spoke about it in our agency, it showed that women have completely had it. It should be over. We have had it with sexism and harassment. And what it also shows, I think it shows a tip of the iceberg. Because gender inequality in sports is far from novel. It's everywhere. The state of play in sports, from decision-making to gender stereotypes to gender-based violence, shows that equality in sports is still a match to be won. And something that really strikes me is that, and we have heard it also today, that sports can be a reflection of society. It has the power to unite. It has the power to break down barriers, to promote gender equality and inclusivity. So how come that, especially in this area, there's so much inequality and it's ongoing? So what I would like to do with you today through my intervention is let's first look at the state of play, and let me share with you some information and data that we have collected as an agency. And let's first look at decision making. Because we know that higher the positions in the area of sports, and it's not only, by the way, in sports, but it's basically everywhere, the less women we see present. My agency collects data on and evidence on women and men in decision-making positions across all areas of life, as I said, including sports. And these data show us that there's steady progress towards gender balance in sports over the years. But if we look at decision-making positions, we see a completely different picture. And we look at decision-making at EU, but also national levels. And let me share, for example, with you the information that we found on the percentage of women presidents in the European confederations of sports. I don't know if you know how many of them are women, but it's a merely 10%, a mere 10%. So, shocking. Let's have a look at the national Olympic committees, because they hold an important role to ensure the representation of their respective countries at the Olympic Games. And it is very timely because we have the Paris Olympic Games this summer. In EU countries, in these national committees, women account for 1 up to 3 positions out of 10. 1 up to 3 positions out of 10. So in the best case, 33%. And this holds little promise for change for the upcoming games. Again, shocking figures. Let's now look at the most funded national sports federations. The top 10 Olympic sports granted the highest public funding, this is also important to know, during the latest allocation of funds from 2018. The share of women slightly improved in all positions, but women are still less than 1 out of 4 in all categories, such as presidents, deputy presidents, members, and executive heads. Now, if we move to the national political level, because we also look at ministers, for example, and administrators in different areas of life, there we see a more positive development. We see there has been gender balance among senior ministers since 2020, working in the field of sports, and administrators since 2019. So you see, change is possible. If there's a will, and if there's a political will, change is possible. Let's move to a second area that we find very important and that we gather information and data about is gender stereotypes in sports. It was already mentioned. And I'm sure that all of you, and we heard the testimonies as well, we have been confronted with stereotypes. By the way, I always stress we all have this implicit, let's say, stereotyping approach. I'm not free from stereotypes. I have been a director for gender equality for many, many years. But I can tell you when someone says athlete, to be very honest, the first picture I see in my mind is a man. And this is explained because when I was a child, I was born in the 60s, what I saw on the television, in my school books, basically everywhere, it was men. So this is ingrained in my system. And I'm not a saint, I can tell you, even though I'm a gender equality expert. So I want to stress this. But since this is such a male-dominated, let's say, area, and it's traditionally associated with men and boys, sports is really prone, the sports area is really prone to stereotyping. Characteristics such as physical strength, resilience, speed, highly competitive, are typically seen as masculine traits. And this is based on the social constructs of masculinity. And it's positive, they sound positive. Therefore, based on rigid ideas of what it means to be a man who does not play sports is unmanly, because men also suffer from these stereotypes. And if a woman plays sports, she could be characterized too manly. But times are moving forward, and there's greater gender diversity at the Olympic Games. In the recent Tokyo Olympics, 18 mixed gender events were introduced in fields including archery, athletics, badminton, sailing, swimming, and triathlon. And I recently learned from one of my staff members who looked into the data that korfbal, which was invented already back in 1902 by a Dutch school teacher. I'm from the Netherlands and I was not aware. I played the sport regularly. It's a game played in gender mixed teams with 2 teams of 8 players, 4 male, 4 female. And when talking about gender stereotypes, let me also bring in another important factor that one wouldn't maybe think of automatically, although I think it was a little bit touched upon in the video we just saw. That's also based on the ingrained stereotypes, that women have a certain role as caregiver. And so it's, let me mention you the percentages. 49% of women who are in a relationship, they report that they are, let's say, the main caretakers of children and other dependents, compared to 6% of men. We did a huge survey among citizens 2 years ago, and women also told in that survey, it means that I have no time for self-care, I have no time to play sports, I have no time for my hobbies. So also these caregiving responsibilities, based on stereotypes, prevent women from taking part in sports, for example. Now I want to go through to a third factor, which is the media impact. And interestingly enough, media have the force to break or to make gender stereotypes. When you look at how women are portrayed in the media, especially when it's linked to sports, it's often sexualized, and it deviates from their sportive achievements. Also, it was already mentioned, the media coverage given to women's and men's sports, there's a huge difference. Although I must say that in my own country, I see more and more attention in the media for women's football. And I've been told by many football fans that they prefer to watch the football games of women to the ones of men's, because there's more fair play and it's more attractive to watch. We have also seen in our studies that there's a positive correlation between the number of women sports journalists and the quantity of women's sports coverage. GBV and sports, the fourth area I would like to touch upon. Unfortunately, I can't say that there's many data available. We have not been able to collect a lot of evidence on gender-based violence in sports. But what we do know, and let me give you those figures, because they're horrible. 1 in 3 women has experienced physical and/or sexual violence since the age of 15. Can you imagine? Look around you. think of the women that you love in your private life. 1 out of 3 have been experiencing this gender-based violence. And it's everywhere, through all layers of society, in all areas of society. So here I would also call upon the member states to be more active, also on collecting data and information on what is going on in sports. Let me close here. Let me just wrap up what I have just said. So, despite women's increased participation in the sports sector over the years, as I said there, women are still underrepresented in sports decision-making at the EU and national level. Secondly, there's a lack of gender statistics on sports. More data are needed. Thirdly, there's a big lack of consensus on concepts, for example, when it comes to gender-based violence. And this is the biggest challenge also for my agency for data collection. And fourth, media have a crucial role in challenging gender stereotypes in sports. What is a potential way forward? Let me mention this briefly to you. Gender mainstreaming in sports politics. So, in the whole process, from starting to develop those policies, through implementing and through evaluating those policies, the only thing that we should ask ourselves, what will be the impact of these policies on women and men, girls and boys in society? And I worked as a policy advisor in the Netherlands, and I can tell you many policies all over the European Union are still very gender blind. So what on earth do we do to women and men, boys and girls in the European Union? Are we really developing the best policies? I'm not convinced, and I think the data also show it, and surely also the narratives we have just heard today. Thank you very much for your attention, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Director Schiele, for your essential contribution with data information on this important topic. We see they really gather data, important data, sometimes, unfortunately, not that optimistic and positive, but always important and helpful. So thank you very much once again, Director. With this, we will open now the discussion, the debate. We go into kind of a Eurovision contest. Are you ready for the Eurovision? We will go from country to country, from capital to capital, from parliament to parliament, to discuss and to hear your voice, because this is about you today, and to hear our great national parliaments at this meeting. I just want to remind you the time is limited of 3 minutes of each of you, maximum 3 minutes. After this, I will be forced to, unfortunately, stop you, that other colleagues can also take the floor. I have a whole long list of the Eurovision contest participants today, so I can't wait even to hear your voices. Members of the parliament can also intervene. I see already my colleagues wishing to take the floor, so I will also put you on the list among our colleagues from the national parliaments. But we will start with the Belgian parliament, because Belgium is leading the European Union. They are having a presidency, and we have our great colleague of us from the Belgian Senate, Latifa Gouchi, who will take the floor as the first one, since they are our leaders for now. So the Belgian Senate, Latifa, the floor is yours. The microphone doesn't work.
Voilà. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you to all of the speakers. Before starting, I would really like to thank you for having chosen this subject, which affects everyone, not just high-level sports, but everyone in our homes, ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, and everyone around us. So I think this is really useful to have this meeting today. Also, Chairman, I am a chair of the Belgian Senate's Equality Committee, and I often say, and I would repeat it today, how many men do we have in this room? So just to explain that fighting for equal rights has got to take place together with men and women, not just women who are always battling for this. So I welcome the fact that there's a male chair for this committee. Before my questions, I would also like to thank all of those women who were brave enough to testify around the world to make progress in this, because for decades now it was a taboo subject. We couldn't talk about it. And as a Belgian, I would like to thank Ms. Van Snick for her courage and to speak on behalf of the weakest. I'll try to be very quick now, because I have several questions, but I know that my colleagues will also be asking questions. I had questions on economic inequalities and wage and salary inequalities in sport between male and female athletes. I think this remains a major problem in sport. And if I take the example of the highest paid athlete in the world, who's a football player, he has an astronomical salary. However, the female players who qualified for the World Cup only received 66%, and above all, had to take time off to be able, from their professional activities, to be able to participate. And I think that this type of disparity is flagrant. And in our respective parliaments, we need to be able to work to counter this. Now, one subject that perhaps wasn't raised was women's visibility in media. We talk a lot about men's achievements in media, but not enough of women's achievements. So I think there's work that needs to be done there as well. I'm trying to be quick because I see my time is going by. To Madame Van Snick, she said in the press that she has stopped her professional career due to reasons of a sports burnout, in particular due to the violence you experienced. I want to ask, did you get any aid or support, and from whom, and how? Is there a specific structure that provides this, and what sort of impact has this had on your physical and mental health, these violences? And thank you very much for the video that you sent. Could we get that? Because I think this is a film that should be shared everywhere to try and reach as many people as possible. Thank you.
Merci à vous, Madame Présidente. Thank you very much. And from Brussels, we go now to Stockholm, to Sweden. Carina Olsson, our colleague from SND Group in European Parliament. Carina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I will start with to say it's an honor for us coming from Sweden to welcome Pia Sundhage. As you know, she is a star in Sweden and worldwide. So I must say and begin to that. She has done so much for women in sport, young girls in sport, and for the whole society, because politics and sports must be more combined, and she has done so much for gender equality. And I'm very happy that we're discussing this topic today. It is something that is very close to my heart, since I both have been a politician and also a leader in sport for many years. So So I think it's very important. And many believe that there is no connection between sports and politics. And this is not true. The reality is that women in sport play a crucial role in the struggle for equality. And inequality is deeply rooted in social structures. People often think about sport as a man's word, and women who play sports often face unfair treatment, and we know that. We need to change these stereotypes and give women and girls the same chances to succeed in sports. Both girls and boys love playing soccer when they are children, but far from more boys make a career out of it. And it's not surprising us when girls are told they can't make a living from football. And it's high time for political action to give women and girls the same conditions for a successful sports career. This will also contribute to break gender norms and contribute to a broader struggle for equality for the whole society. And also it's so important to talk about sexual violence, and we must talk about that in sports too, because if we give the signals that it is also this sexual violence in sports, young women and girls can dare to say and tell us. And as a leader in sports, I'm the chairperson in a football team, and when I know that, I have said to the leaders if there are male leaders, you must leave this club because you cannot be here. So you must dare to do that. So because this is the only chance to change this. And what do you think that we must do as politicians to give the more possibilities for young girls and women to be in sport in the future and see that there are a career for them?
Tack, thank you very much. And from Sweden, we go to Hungary, to Budapest. Tünde Sába from National Parliament has the floor.
Thank you, dear Mr. President, dear committees, dear colleagues. It is a great pleasure to be here today, as it's important to discuss the role of the women in sports and to incorporate good practices into sports management rules. If you allow me, I will continue to my native language. Mint volt...
I am an Olympian. I was a swimmer, and as a specialist in sport, I carried out research on child protection in sport. It's very important to stress that we need to increase female participation in sport, and we also need to ensure that young people continue sport and don't give up. This is also important when we talk about careers as well. We need to be able to help people to reconcile their careers. We have seen significant changes as well, as you mentioned, Chairman. At the 2012 London Olympics, this was the first time that all countries had female participants, and where we saw an increase in female participation. However, we do have significant room for improvement. We need to see more and more women involved in decision-making bodies, because it's still very, very low. In order to increase the number of women involved in these bodies, we need to take action. We need to fight stereotypes surrounding women. And we have heard people talk about that already at today's meeting. We need to ensure that there is support both for women participating in sport and for women in leadership positions. It's incredibly important for young women to be inspired by other women involved in sport so that future generations want to compete. So this is why we need to have leadership positions occupied by women at national and international level. Equality in sport is not just important for women, but it's important for the whole of society. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. And from Budapest, we will come back to Brussels. I have Abir Al-Salani, our colleague from Renew, wishing to take the floor. Abir, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. I will speak in Swedish.
It's an incredible honor to have you here, Pia. It's just wonderful to see you. I'm both proud and a little starstruck at the same time. So welcome to the European Parliament. This is really time that you've come, considering everything you have achieved and done, having more gender equality in football and sport in general. So I want to know something about your experiences. We know that there's not enough money being invested in girls' sport, both in terms of soccer. I have a 9-year-old daughter who loves soccer and a boy who loves soccer as well. And so, of course, we're going to all these matches, going to training. But I see the difference in their teams, how much money is invested in their teams. And I would have to say, at the very beginning of sport, if you really want to start having equality, it really starts at the municipal level, it's actually the municipalities who are responsible for making sports accessible, whether we're talking about a venue, a sports hall, a field to play on. And so from your experience, what would you say? What is the most efficient level in which to support sports, where we could invest more in order to ensure a more gender equal soccer, for example? And of course, I know, of course, at the international level, there hasn't always been a lot of equality hasn't been very welcome at that level. I know that. But I really want to find at what level, where could we really invest in order to really ensure gender equality in sport?
Thank you very much, colleague. And from here we go to beautiful Madrid, the Senate, the Spanish Senate, Nidia Arevalo. Where is our colleague?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman, members of the podium, speakers, colleagues. I am delighted to be here today and to be able to share with you a day that it begins tomorrow, which is the 8th of March, which is significant for all women. I'm the deputy spokesperson for sports equality in Spain, and what I would like to share here is some thoughts from Spain. Spanish women's sports is far from being equal. Only 3.7% of Spanish women practice federated sports. Only 23.5% of sports licenses in Spain belong to women. Despite the growth of Spanish Olympic sportswomen, there were medals in London, in Rio, and the latest in Tokyo. We had 26 medals for Spain, but only 7 were for women. So it's true that we're a long way from equality. The sports that have the greatest amount of participation in women's participation in Spain is gymnastics, 90%, volleyball, and horseback sports and skating. We all know that football is the king of sports in Spain, but the quota of women is only 6.5% of women play football. Another alarming fact is that 83% of Spanish girls don't do any sport on a regular basis. Spain needs to reform its current plans for sports training to demonstrate the interest in the practicing of sport for women from a very early age. Now, obviously, if we talk about directorate positions, we're also missing out in the management levels. For the moment, the Olympic Committee has 117 members. 13 are women. We need to change the professional culture of the sports institutions. We need to make sure that women occupying director-level posts are made more visible. We need to improve the technical situation for women as well. To finish, I would like to recall, first of all, 5 steps forward for women's sports. Rights acquired in women's football, increasing of media coverage, international recognition, progressive increase in the number of licenses, but also 5 points that are still pending to reach equality. Professionalization of Spain's women's football, problem of equal salaries, a question of culture, the threat of the trans inclusion in women's sports. So that needs to be immediate. The presence of women in institutions to testify to all of this. Without policies to promote sports by women, we're not going to produce any sort of progress. This is something that we need to do more quickly. We have a long road ahead of us, but we all need to make an effort to. We've taken some steps, but we need to have many more. We need to have a decent situation which gives women the role that they're entitled to in sports and not allow them to be always considered inferior. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much for your intervention. And now we go to where it all started, the democracy, to Greece. Hellenic Parliament will speak now. Maria Antonio, our colleague from Athens. The floor is yours.
Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ, κύριε Πρόεδρε. Αξιότιμες κυρίες προσκεκλημένες.
Thank you very much, Chairman, guests, experts. It's an honor to be here today representing the Greek Parliament and as chairwoman of the Commission on Equality, Youth and Human Rights in the current Greek Assembly. I'd like to share some comments that I have in relation to gender in sport, in particular with relation to my country. These data come from the European Gender Institute, and they are related to integrating the gender aspect into sport, especially participation of women in sport and female employment in sport. Well, first of all, according to the data, there has been a slight but quite considerable increase, 0.36%. That's in 2014. In 2022, just over 0.4%. But there still is a gender gap. And when it comes to representation of women in decision-making bodies, in 2020, legislative measures were taken in order to ensure that both sexes be represented in at least 1/3 of administrative posts in sport, and this includes senior level positions. Female representation in management boards is incredibly important within the federations. This also has links to funding. But despite these measures in 2022, only 19% of members of these boards were women. Something else that I'd like to highlight is gender-based violence in sport that other guests have already mentioned. In 2020 in Greece, there were several cases of this, and they raised the public's awareness of this issue. And this also coincided with the Me Too movement. The recommendations from the Council of Europe on gender-based violence been taken into account, as have the Olympic Committee's recommendations. And these can be, or the ILO's recommendations, these can then form a legal basis. But there is a great deal more that needs to be done. And then there's also the issue of stereotypes and the role of the media. Well, the link between these factors is very complicated. The media obviously are there to promote and sell sport, and they continue present biased representations of women, as we've already seen. In Greece, we are tackling this problem. We have an annual action plan, and this is for women's safety in sport. And we also have the support from the Be Active European programme. And we are in contact with female athletes taking part in the next Olympic Games, some from Greece as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. And with this, I propose that since there is so many questions, I propose that we go for a short round for possible answers, and we come back to you, because it's really too much. So I think our colleagues, guests, have something to answer and comment. So if we go for the round, maybe we start with Ms. Sundhage. Would you like to comment? Each of you 2 minutes, and then I come back to you. If you want to take the floor, of course, you're not forced.
Okay, I will reach out to Sweden, of course. And I truly believe that access to pitches, access to coaches, the same way for boys and girls, that is the answer. So, but today we had an attitude that is, yeah, we can play football, that's no problem. But if some girl said, I want to be the best, it's not acceptable the same way as the boys. So I have experienced in Sweden where they start something new with talented players in the club. And they start with boys. So I asked, why do you start with boys? You have girls as well. Well, first we have to figure out if it works. If it works, then we implement to the girls. Instead of start, and the start is important, to start the same way. And it's about changing attitude. And why would we change attitude? Because it's good for the society. If everybody knew, somebody saying we don't have that many men here, if everybody knew how important it is for the society, we get a better society if everybody is included. So that is what we need to do to convince all of us that we are all winners if we include men, women, boys and girls in the same time. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And now, Ms. Van Snick, if you would like to comment. You don't have to, up to you. Would you like to comment on any of the interventions?
Yes, of course. Yeah, in French, sorry. Il y a eu effectivement...
Well, indeed, there were a lot of comments. We talked a lot about media. Since I spoke of this in my comments, that they do play a key role. There are public media. That's how it works in Belgium anyway. I would expect that in other European countries it would be the same. And there we really could have a significant lever to impose quotas. I mean, in Belgium we have equal numbers of male and female ministers because we imposed a quota. And thanks to that, I mean, I'm delighted to see women that are ministers of defense and women's ministers of sport. That obviously combats the stereotypes. Now, on the question on burnout, it was very difficult for me. I stopped my career due to burnout. I experienced domestic violence, sexist, sexual, physical, and psychological violence. It was very difficult. When I wanted to come back to sport, I did get support from the Olympic Committee. It was really there for me. But in terms of the federation, it was extremely complicated because they didn't understand to what extent mental health was a problem. It was much easier to set up a program to take care of someone who injured their knee than to cope with someone who had a mental health issue. So there was a lack of support and lack of will. And the fact that I was a woman and the fact that I was older than the average, I was seen as old for judoka. At the moment, there aren't any data or studies being done on women. We have American football athletes, which are an incredible example of studies being done. I mean, we didn't have this before. There were bicycles that weren't adapted to women. There's a whole series of issues that are specific to women that are not studied in sports studies, be it the technical material, the way training is done. Everything is done based on men, despite the fact that women are hyper-performing. I mean, if you could imagine if we had the means and training plans which took into account all the specifics of women. Another question I wanted to react to, I think it was you said, how can the politicians act for sport? Well, there's different ways. How can we have policies? I mean, sport in schools, everything starts at school. And mixed sports before adolescence. It's important for children to be able to practice sport together. That's how we can fight against stereotypes from the earliest age, by being active in sport together. And you can see that women can be as talented and good as boys. I think I've answered all the questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Ms. Gionai, if you would like to comment on anything, the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Yes, thanks a lot, Mr. Biedron. I would just only add some issues or some answers based on what I've heard, even as comments and questions. First, it's to be the Istanbul Convention, not just only be ratified by 22 countries, but meanwhile, since the European Union has approved that, has ratified that, I think that here together we can do something and taking some measures and urging the other countries to ratify, even combating the violence for the women in sports. Second, I think that it's very important that the legal framework of all national countries and the implementation for ending the impunity of aggressors in the cases of violence of women in sports has to be framed in the best way. Because we see in our legal framework that we have very good provisions for ending the impunity of aggressors in other cases of violence, but not specifically for women in sports. And third, of course, that since there are some good results that have been achieved in sports, even for women, but meanwhile we have heard, even by your comments and by the figures that Ms. Shirley showed to us, about a very small percentage of the women in kind of leading position in sports. I think that it's very important that we can urge our parliaments and our governments in our countries to implement the recommendations of the resolution of Council of Europe, of the Parliamentary Assembly on gender mainstreaming in sports, that is of the year 2015, and the other resolution that is for ending discrimination against women in the world of sport of the year 2022. I'm mentioning these two main resolutions because it's very important that we can share the same principles and standards that we want to achieve even as members of Council of Europe or members of European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker in this round will be Director Sheila, if you of course want to intervene.
Thank you. No, I think what was raised from the room, I think it only underlines what we have been saying in the introduction when we started this panel. And I see a lot of parallels with other areas in society. But I think so when we talk about gender pay gap, which was mentioned, GBV, the lack of women in decision-making positions, it's basically everywhere throughout society. But what I'm personally thinking, also looking at how difficult it is for our agency to find data in the area of sports, this maybe the light hasn't been shed yet so much on this area. And so I think it comes very much down to awareness raising, what is going on. That what is going on in the field of sports, it's not so different from what is going on in other areas of life. And you know, you can have as much documents and conventions and directives, they're great, and they have to be there. But in the end, it all comes down to the question if those who hold the power to make a change, if they are really willing to. And I'm not always convinced. I mean, I have seen also in my private life, but also throughout my career in this area, there's a lot of lip service. But in the end, are those who have the political power, or those who have the power in the field of sports, do they really want to make a change? And I sometimes ask such people. I have done the same with colleagues in my own ministry who were basically unwilling to pay attention to gender equality in their respective portfolios. I ask them if they have daughters and sons. Yeah, because I'm sincerely wondering if those people, those men, for example, who combat such harassment in whatever area in society, what would they feel if it were their own daughters? If it were the women they love in their private life? I think I'm convinced they would find it highly unacceptable. So why do they do this to their colleagues? And there's also this, of course, this big influence of power imbalance. If you're dependent on someone, be it in sports or anywhere else, then it's very difficult to step forward and to say that you're a victim of violence. And I can speak of my own experience. And then it's always the same. There's denial, and the victim has to prove almost that she has been victim of violence, which it should be the other way around, actually. So basically, I think a lot of awareness raising of what is going on in this area is needed. And I'm convinced that what we have seen so far, and I have seen recently also in my own country, a lot of scandals, especially in the area of sports, it's the tip of the iceberg. And it really takes courage for women, but also men, to step forward and to say that they have been victims of harassment and violence, for example. But lip service, it doesn't serve anyone. Change can only come if it's truly meant to be a change, and that's sometimes my worry. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for your intervention. Indeed, we have recently negotiated the directive on combating violence against women and domestic violence, and one of the issues was a European consensus on the rape definition, and there was no agreement on the consent-based definition of rape. It was blocked in the directive. So we see all the obstacles and difficulties. That we have definitions on so many issues, hundreds of definitions, even thousands in European Union, and we still don't have a common definition of rape and being treated as a Eurocrime. This is the reality of 2024. But let's move further with our discussion. My colleague, the President Ganucci from Belgium, asked for men on the board. I fully agree, we need more men on the board. And that's why I give the floor to the first man to intervene now, Mauro Berruto from Italy, from Chamber of Deputies. Where is our colleague? Over there. The floor is yours for 2 minutes. So I'm sorry.
3 minutes. Grazie, Mr. Biedron.
Thank you, Mr. Biedron, for having chosen sport in talking about rights, in this particular women's rights. I have a brief political experience, but a lengthy sports experience. I was also a sportsman in my country, and I learned so much from sport. But above all, I learned that sport needs to speed access to rights. It is political, as has been said, in the highest sense of the term. I don't want to deal with the terms of violence, that it is something that I think that every parliament needs to act against. On the rest, I think so much has been done, thanks to the initiatives of the European Parliament, amongst others, but I think the problems are not all the same. There are priorities. The main priority is to improve balance in sports governance. This needs to be the starting point. It's not acceptable that information that 14% of women today, on average, are in leadership positions. So in Italy, 78 sports organizations amongst federations and other sports parties, 76 are presided by men and 2 by women. Until that changes, nothing will change. And I would add, it's not enough to just have vice chairs. We need to ensure adequate equality. There's also the issue of payment. There's difference between financing provided to male sports and those of female sports. That's unacceptable, and also the salary situation is unacceptable. And then there's also the sport narration, the storytelling, the words we use to describe sport, because the words and language affect reality and define it and can change it. On the 20th of September, the Italian Parliament unanimously decided to change the Constitution by adding an article saying that the Republic recognizes the social educational value of promoting sports activities as a source of well-being in all of its form. So for 5 months now, we've had a right to sport, but that's not enough. We need to have public policies which make that right available to all citizens, be they male or female. And I would close with the effect on the psychophysical benefits that sports generates. I want to be clear that this creates an advantage. It's a welfare system, as scientific data has shown, that this allows member states to save on healthcare for their own citizens. As Pia Sundhage said, when an action provokes an advantage, it's more likely to succeed. So my message would be sport and not policies, because sport is an investment in the future of society, and obviously a fair society, and which exists in reality and not just in intentions, where we would have real equality. Thank you very much, Mr. Berruto.
And now we go from beautiful Rome to beautiful Istanbul, to Grand National Assembly of Turkey, and Ms. Çiğdem Konkagül will have the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, distinguished MEPs. I would like to greet you all cordially. The role and significance of women in Turkey and around the world is always increasing. Women need to be empowered. This is a sine qua non of development. In developed and developing nations alike, alongside social and economic development, the role and status of women have become sounder. And of course, this brought about equal opportunity for both genders. In sports as well, women have taken their deserved place. Today, equality of opportunity in sports have paved the way for successful women athletes. They have performed successfully in national and international arenas, and they have become historic figures. In 2002, we had 22 active female athletes, which increased to 43% in 2023, and the number of female athletes in international Olympic Games have increased significantly, all the way from 16 to 108. In Paris in 2024, when you look at the athletes, you see that there are more than 600 Turkish athletes, 300 of which are female, and we also support disabled athletes. In Rio, we sent 33 athletes to Paralympic Games, and we also participated in the recent Paralympic Games with 44 different athletes. The Sultans of the Net, the Turkish national volleyball team, have become European champions and world champions in 2023, and they won the Olympics Cup as well. So they won 3 consecutive cups, and this team, this female volleyball team, became the first champion in volleyball in Europe and in the world within the same year. The Ministry of Sports need to prepare strategic plans and reports in order to empower and strengthen female athletes even further. An equality division or department need to be established in order to ensure gender equality in all walks of life, including sports. Distinguished MEPs, esteemed panel, when we're talking about the success stories of women and women athletes, I would like to draw your attention to women who are suffering around the world. In Paris, we will watch the Paris Olympic Games in 2024. But women athletes are banned from wearing their headscarves while competing. Human beings are creatures of dignity, and their dignity need to be respected. Women should not be discriminated on the grounds of their belief and faith. They should not be isolated from society on these grounds. This causes great suffering for women, and these biased attitudes should not continue in the France of 2024. In Gaza, more than 30,000 innocent civilians have been killed, 70% of whom are women and children. They are being bombed. Hospitals, schools, places of prayer and infrastructure are being destroyed. The oppression in Gaza is having a deep impact on our humanitarian values. This persecution in Gaza needs to be heard around the world, and this is why we're talking about it. We expect all countries to raise their voices against the persecution in Gaza. I'm very happy that we are all gathered here today. I would like to greet you respectfully and cordially, and I hope that we will live in a more just and equitable world on the eve of the International Women's Day.
From Turkey and from Ankara, we will go to Zagreb. We have our colleague from the Croatian Parliament, Anita Pornic-Radosevic. Colleague? 3 minutes, yes, I see you. No worries, take your time.
Thank you. I was speaking Croatian. Sviju vas srdačno pozdravljam i prenosim pozdrave i čestitke povodom Međunarodnog dana žena iz Zagreba, Hrvatske i Hrvatskog parlamenta.
On the occasion of... okay. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Okay, I would like to extend a welcome and greetings to all. Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Thank you. Okay. I would like to convey to you the greetings and best wishes on the occasion of International Women's Day from Zagreb and all of Croatia. I am proud that Croatia can boast of really excellent athletes. Janica Kostelic, one of the leading skiers. Unsurpassed results, 4 Olympic medals. Then Blanka Vlasic, one of the high jumpers, also Sandra Perkovic, Barbara Matic, many others. Apart from the success on the field, Croatia put women in the administration of sports. We had a state secretary, we had a parliamentarian who is also today the president of the National Sports Committee, Sandra Chorak, the vice president of the Croatian National Olympic Committee. And there's a minister at the head of the Ministry of Tourism and Sports. All these facts speak of the representation of women in sports in Croatia. However, there's still inequality, and despite all efforts, women are still underrepresented in all areas of sport, and we have to raise awareness in order to remove all barriers. I will briefly tell you what we are doing in Croatia. At the beginning of 2023, the new law on sports was enacted with special emphasis on gender equality, prescribing that sports have to be equally available to all, disregarding gender, and therefore, we have promotional campaigns for the representation of women in sports, and also we struggle against stereotypes and violence. We are now preparing an action plan for higher representation of women in sports in order to include more women in sports activities, also promote women athletes in the media, in sports management, and following the development of women in sports. We have to do the same at the level of the union as well, since sport is an important instrument for the promotion of equality, and we have to make possible equal access to girls and boys to sports of their choice. We have strategic documents and also allocate more funds from 28 million in 2016 to about 80 in 2024. And it is our objective to create equal conditions for all to take part in sports, disregarding which sports we are talking about, or disregarding where in Croatia they live. Sport at schools and academic sport are of utmost importance. We also support dual careers, provide scholarships, at the moment more to boys than to girls, but we see things changing for the better, and there's still a broad scope for improvement.
Thank you very much, colleague, for your intervention. And now we go to Romania, to the Romanian Senate in Bucharest. Evdokia Eleni.
Da, bună ziua.
Where are you, colleague?
Bună ziua.
Hello. Romania, alongside all the other EU member states, wants to increase the proportion of women amongst entrepreneurs and leadership positions in sports organizations and clubs. Right now in Romania, we have 13 sports federation presidents who are women, out of a total of approximately 60 sports federations. Right now, the National Agency for Sports is under the leadership of Elisabeta Lipa, who is a multi-gold medal sportswoman from the Olympic Games. She obtained 5 gold medals, 2 silver, and 2 bronze at 2 Olympic Games. She was named the best rower of the century by the International Rowing Committee. The Romanian Olympic Committee has 2 women vice presidents. The aforementioned rowing champion Mrs. Lipa and Mrs. Potek. And Mrs. Potek is also an Olympic swimming champion. All of these results at the Olympic Games show that gold medalists in Romania are 70% to the proportion of 70% women. Women's sport is based on principles such as resilience, teamwork, dedication, and perseverance. And these principles can be applicable universally, and they can be imitated at all levels in society. These principles can be combined with this pursuit for excellence, and anybody can follow these principles in order to surpass their barriers, in order to attain success. I would also like to add that people have said that it's enough for women to reach a 30% representation, but we still need to fight for that extra 20% until we reach 50%. That 20% is important for us, for our children, because women are also the ones who have given birth to all the children who participate in sports, including the boys, and that's very important as well. Thank you.
A colleague from Romania, and we go to Spain. Senate of Spain, Julia Liberal will take the floor now.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank all of those who organised this meeting and all of the people on the podium who gave very interesting speeches. It's very important to talk about women and sport. Can you hear me okay? Oh, you can hear me better now. Thank you. I am a senator, as the chairman said, and I represent the Spanish government in the Senate. Could the microphone be moved close to the speaker, please?
From close to you, so it will be better for interpreters.
Ahora, perdón.
I'm sorry about that. Now it's better. As I was saying, in 2022, Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez set a goal, and that was to modernize the 1990 law on sport, which said that, and this is about women, and this law came after a pandemic in which we saw that sport was a right and need for all Spaniards, regardless of whether it was competitive sport or not. Our data show that for every euro invested in sport, there is 4 euros are saved in healthcare. And the priority for women as well in this, in ensuring we acquire these rights. And this law does not just talk about competitive sport. It also talks about women who are either at home or working and who can also practice sport. For all women, regardless of their identity or their sex, their gender. And recently there was a series event at the Football World Cup, and this was a significant issue for Spanish and global football. And it reached the extent that the Prime Minister said in this Parliament that sport would be in the ministry which represents the spokesperson for the government. This is how important it is for us, because we need visibility for women. We need models to follow as well. I am one of the few fortunate women who has been president of a federation. Therefore, we need proper federations. We have 17 autonomous communities in Spain. There is a federation for each sport in each of these autonomous communities. But there are over 1,500 federations in total, but there are so few women actually heading these federations. We need to make progress, and I would like to highlight this law. But the biggest detractor was Mr. Rubiales. He was the person, Luis Rubiales. He was the person who stopped Spanish football, women's football, from being able to progress. And we have seen significant investment in women's football in Spain, and this should bear fruit in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleague. Are you still managing? You okay, all of you? Yes, you manage. It's 1 hour left. So, and the interventions are, for me at least, very interesting. So I hope you enjoy it. I enjoy it very much. This will be the last intervention before we come back to our distinguished guests, and then there will be the third round of interventions in the Q&A session. So Domenica Spinelli from Italian Senate. So from Madrid, we go to Rome now. Micro, non è spinto.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, thank you for this extremely useful opportunity, because meeting with all member states and states is useful for growth. The Italian Parliament, in particular women in the Italian Parliament, have had a driving role in policies for equality between genders, the equality between access between men and women to jobs and the organization, to equal wages and equal maternity leaves. We've been active in the fight for equal rights. Our laws, we have seen the significant improvement compared to other member states, but the road to full equality and a true cultural transformation is still, we still have very far to go. There are so many movements underway in our country, particularly designed to promote sport. These are supported and they need to be reinforced. In September of 2023, as my colleague from the Chamber representative has said, the Italian Parliament unanimously approved the modification of Article 33 of the Constitution with a view to include the educational and social value and the psychophysical benefits of sports in all its forms. With this new constitutional provision, it is the Republic's duty to ensure that the practice of sport is universal, without any sort of distinction based on sex, race, language, or religion, political opinions, or personal or social conditions. As Andrea Bodi, the Minister of Sport, has said, young people in Italy now can take advantage of all initiatives that will ensure they can participate in this, and we've reinforced the commitment to protect minors with a whole integrated healthy management merits of practicing sport for women. Because of this, under Giorgia Meloni, in the budget law of 2022, increased the resources to support maternity leave for non-professional athletes. We need to promote greater investment moving from amateur to professional sports. The Parliament's commitment and the government's commitment is designed to make the finances available, be they European or national, to ensure that integrating gender is more and more present in all public policies and above all in sports. With that, I do feel it is essential to have the action from the EU, which is consistent with the treaties, which will continue to develop the European aspect of sport by promoting equality. Today, it's my honor to represent the Italian Senate, and I'm quite proud to confirm Italy's commitment to this issue and to respect for everyone, particularly women. So, thank you very much.
Onorevole, and buon 8 marzo anche lei e tutte le colleghe. Grazie tanto.
Congratulations to all of you.
We move to our distinguished speakers, and the first, of course, you don't have to intervene. I just remind you, you have 2 minutes, but if you want to take the floor, the opportunity is for Ms. Sundhage.
This story telling that takes place, it's very important for me. It's very different sometimes for my brought up in Sweden, but nevertheless, it's important because it gives me a lot of power. And the question I'm asking myself, what could I do? Because it's a lot of talking, like, and you will mention how politics even sometimes, okay, it's talking, but what are the actions behind the words? And these minutes, these hours, reminds me of we have a long way to go. And I constantly ask myself, what could I do in my world of football? Thank you for that, for sharing the stories.
Thank you. Ms. Van Snick, would you like to comment on anything?
Yes. On a beaucoup entendu.
Well, we've heard a lot about rights for everybody, and in some countries this is already the case, and we all have the right to access sport. Obviously it's difficult for women, otherwise we wouldn't be here today, but those women, for example, who wear the hijab, or trans women, for example, or intersex people who are not able to find their place in sport. As I mentioned before when I talked about binary categories, these are also important issues. Yes, and when it comes to budgets, it's also very important for countries to focus on this. You talked about figures and data. We don't have enough figures and data. And we don't have data on how budgets are being used. We have budgets at federal level, we have budget for infrastructure, but it's also interesting, it would be interesting to see how these budgets are allocated and distributed, and I think that these budgets should be spent in a fair way. Thank you.
Much. And Ms. Yonai, would you like to comment?
Thanks, Robert. A short comment. As we know, sometimes even we as politicians, we do not have, or until now, we haven't had the right attention in our national countries. And I've heard a lot of members of the national parliaments here, despite the issues and concerns that have been raised, awareness and prevention about for protecting from all forms of violence for women in sports hasn't had the proper attention. And I think that we have to start from this. First, to make the awareness and to do the awareness campaigns or awareness initiatives in all our national countries for what issues and problems the women in sports face. Second, we have always said that one of the main goals to protect women from the violence is to empower them. So if these two will not go hand by hand, it will be difficult to have the protection of the women in sports, even from violence and discrimination. The third thing that I want to mention is that, as I've mentioned in my intervention, the project that, the joint project of EU and Council of Europe that is called All in Plus, promoting greater gender equality in sports, that has started in January of this year. It will be very important, not just only for trying to identify the issues and gathering the data and then to find a way how to address the problems, but even since this project, it's in 20 countries that is going to be implemented. Albania is one of them. It's Greece, it's Cyprus, Spain, France, and other Sweden, and Ukraine. So there are plenty of countries that we will use even to share the best experience. If Sweden in legal framework, but not only, even on empowering the women in sports for supporting them financially with more budget and so on, then it's something that we in Albania or in other countries, we can learn from the best practice of Sweden. So let's hope that and be in contact in order that we can better implement and having better results even on this joint initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tilda. Ms. Sheila, would you like to take the floor?
Yes, thank you. I would like to come back to the first speaker in this round, I think from Italy, who stressed how important it is that we have more women in decision-making all over the place. Let me maybe also speak a bit about parliaments, because as Robert said, our agency calculated a few years ago that with this speed, the improvement of gender equality, it will take 60 years before we have achieved gender equality if nothing changes. But let's also look at parliaments, because if the improvement of women in parliaments, it goes at the speed that it is going now. Let me share two data with you. It will take another 11 years to achieve gender balance. What gender balance means at least 40% of each gender, and it will take another 28 years to achieve gender parity in national parliaments. So I would really, and I did this yesterday in another session that was dealing with elections and women in parliaments, really also stress how important it is that this speeds up. Quota were already mentioned by one of the panelists. Indeed, what we see where quota systems are in place, personally, maybe I'm not such a fan of quota per se, because I wonder why is it necessary, but it works. So those countries who have quota systems in place, also for parliaments, it works. But also when you're drawing up the list for the elections, women should be put in winnable places, not somewhere at the bottom of the list. And also these zipped systems, where you have, let's say, women, men on the list, it works. It is true that decision-making is very important, and also knowing that gender-balanced decision-making systems, that through them we achieve better results. The elections are extremely important, the upcoming European elections, but also the elections at national level. We need more women voters, because men are more often the voters in all countries and also in the European elections. So we need more women voters, and we need more women in parliaments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. And we start now with the last round of interventions. And the first one will be again the Belgian presidency, Sarah Schlitz, who used to be, and I cooperate with Sarah on different occasions, Belgian Secretary of State for Gender Equality, Equal Opportunities and Diversity, if I remember the full name of your position. So responsible for the topics we are discussing now. Dear colleague, the floor is yours. You can start this round.
Thanks a lot, Robert. Nice to meet you. Merci à toutes et tous pour...
Thank you all very much for all of your very useful comments today. I'm a member of the Belgian Federal Parliament, and I'm active in the inquiry on sexual violence in the church that's going on. our committee, we're working on what happened in the church, but also on violence outside of the church, and in particular, how to take care of the victims afterwards, what sort of solutions to set up so that these victims can recover as best as possible. During this legislature, we developed centres for taking on the care of victims. We have 10 centres now in Belgium. The centres devote at least an hour to the victims. They take into account the medical, legal, psychology support and allow victims to make official complaints to the police. And they're trained to help them with that. Here we're talking about acute victims. In terms of long-term victims, the question is, what would be the most appropriate structures to take care of them? That's what we're thinking about in the Belgian Federal Parliament at the moment, as far as the victims of old sexual violence in the church. And I think throughout society there are also victims from different fields, such as sport, who were victims, again, of this violence linked to the power and the strength relationships. And I was wondering whether you have already looked at possible solutions or structures that should be set up at the national level to take care of these victims. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. And now we go to Luxembourg Chamber of Deputies. And the second man in this Eurovision contest, Georges Angel. Are you over there? The floor is yours.
Voilà. Merci.
Thank you. I'm one of the few men in the room to take the floor. The issue of women in sports is not an issue that should only be looked at by women, but it should be looked at by the whole of society. And that includes men, of course. Thank you very much to all of those who've taken part for the very interesting discussions. I fully agree with what the speaker in front of me was saying about governance and on storytelling, and the scandal that not enough women are involved in sport. And this has been highlighted in many interventions this morning. I was particularly struck by what Ms. Van Snick was saying. And this subject has been a concern for me for a long time. That is, how can we respect the physical integrity of a person, that is, not attack them, and also respect equal, fair and honest competition? And I have been thinking about this for a long time, and I'd like to ask the panel, how can we react in an appropriate manner when such situations occur? So thank you very much for talking about this subject and for putting this subject on the agenda, but also the issue of intersex people and trans people. This is also a subject which concerns me a great deal. Thank you very much in advance for your reactions on that matter.
Thank you for your intervention. And now we go to our Hungarian colleague, MEP, who in this house and outside this house is a symbol of very important fight for equality in the context of Roma people. She's a legend. I don't like to say it about people who are still so young and active, but she is. Livia Jaroka is with us, member of European Parliament. Livia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, President, and I'm very sorry to be late. I was able to follow the discussion, and I would like to thank and congratulate our speakers. And I would like to bring in an aspect that many of the colleagues already have touched upon in a shorter version. I would like to highlight the role of sport in the most deprived areas of Europe, because therefore the women is not only meaning a way of integration and keeping away from deviances, but it also means a system that is perfectly can accompany an educational path for those who are coming from the most deprived ghettos and the small villages around Europe. So I would like to thank and highlight the importance of this committee in assisting the Commission of introducing very new and sport-related integration projects around the areas in Europe, and I think that we have to use EU money for this, and I would like to thank the Commissioner for her commitment in this. And I would like to draw your attention to the fact that many of the national parliamentarians today has brought many of the good practices that they have seen in their fields being successful. So I think it's our turn, turning to International Roma and Day in April the 8th, and turning to International Women's Day tomorrow, to really highlight the importance of sport when it comes to integrating the most deprived. Those women who are taking part in sport, they are much more healthy, they are much ready to work, and they are much ready to do multitasking when they are grown up. So thank you very much for your support, and let's push the Commission and the Council under the Hungarian presidency to get support for all the member states, for all your mayors who want to introduce sport programs for women, young children in the most deprived European areas. Thank you very much, President.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Now we go to Croatian Parliament. Maria Selak-Raspudic, who will have a floor for 3 minutes. Where is our dear colleague? Over there.
Hello to everybody. The question which is often raised in public and does affect at least the public perception of women's rights is the question of transgender athletes in female sports competitions. Following that ground, I would like to know, do you find this question relevant? Do EU institutions plan to open the political debate about this issue and take a clear stand on it? I saw these questions were raised previously by several MPs, but there never was a clear answer from the Commission. So maybe to rephrase my question, or to put it simply, of course, I am aware and I know the equality as such is very important. And I'm a head of committee of gender equality in Croatia. But I was wondering, do you recognize the fact that women's rights and transgender rights in some sports can be in collision due to biological differences between men and women? And if so, what is the solution from your standpoint? Or you maybe find the goal of promoting gender and transgender equality more important than the consequences of these possible collisions. Could we hear, and can we hear maybe a more clear stand on this issue, especially having in mind that this issue is very present in public sphere and does affect women's rights and also transgender population on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Now we move to Lina Galvez-Munoz from SND from Spain, our colleague, member of the European Parliament, a champion on women's rights, a great member of this committee. Lina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much also for bringing this topic here at the Parliament, at this inter-parliamentarian assembly, let's say, because it's a very important topic that has not been touched enough. I'm sorry I was late. I was in another place, but I think what is clear for all the interventions is how important is public policies, that we really need public policies in order to change discrimination, gender discrimination, and also the huge gap And if we want women in sport, obviously we need to intervene from an early age as well in childhood, but especially among teenagers, where we know is the moment in which the gap continue to increase. And we really need to go to the roots to see which are the expectations we are putting in boys and girls different, and also what we expect about their bodies. And now that the world is going more and more digital with all the press they have on their images and in a different way. So we really need to study more. I'm sure from EIGE they are doing that on their time use, because obviously this is absolutely important if we want women in the all over our life to be active in a sport that will be very good for our life, and to have an aging that is healthier than we have. I think that as our Hungarian colleague has said, we should also look that with intersectionally approach, because there are other axes that are very important, other inequality axes that are very important also to explain differences. Because if in a deprived area still boys could play football, let's say, and it is expected for them to do it, and it's right socially for them to do it, this is not the case for girls. So there are also a lot of class differences on the top of this gender difference. So there are a lot to do. It's very good that we are dealing with that here, and let's do it, and let's start to really design good public policies that could serve also as a good example for all European countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleague. And we have 4 speakers left. This is the great news, but they are fantastic. So can't wait to hear them. And the first one is our colleague from Chamber of Deputies from Italy, Nicole Matteoni. Nicole, you over there.
Yeah. Allora, grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the colleagues who have spoken, and all of our speakers, in particular those women who have told us about the violence they experienced as sportswomen and discrimination, because repeating it here in front of all of the members of Parliament from all of the countries here today is significant to how important it is to denounce these facts, to not be afraid to denounce them, and together, thanks to these moments and opportunities, we need to repeat this loud and long. This is obviously a major subject to consider. I think women in sport represents well, it has 2 main issues. One, access to sport. So recognizing the fact that not everywhere do female children have access to sports. There are economic problems, there are social aspects. So I think there is still a lot that needs to be done to change that. We need to ensure that there is an opportunity for implementing policies accordingly. And we also talk about inequalities in sport. Reference has been made to different problems in European countries, but a lot of prevention work is needed still, and general awareness raising on the issue, because we can set up all the laws we want with severe penalties to condemn these horrible practices, but if there's no cultural change to attack this type of violence, we're not going to succeed just through legislation. I come from Trieste, which is the second most sporting city in Italy, and there's a lot of tradition there, and I too would like to contribute here good practice. It's a unique city because we've had a rich history which has allowed us to open various sports fields and change palaces into sports halls and try and make sport more attractive for the children. So I think that's important. So from to start children as young as 0 to 6 sports activities, everyone can do it. I think that's one of the positive actions we can carry forward with. So thank you very much indeed for holding this event, and I hope we can all communicate this.
To Croatia, Katica Glamuzina has the floor.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, let me just say thank you for assembling such an impressive panel today, and thank you all for your very impressive contributions to this discussion. What I wanted to say was that going through the materials provided for this meeting, I have come across some information that has surprised me. Although I am generally very interested and focused on topics that concern gender equality, and I thought nothing can surprise me anymore. There are no more surprising statistics. Having read that in 2023, not a single woman ranked among the top 100 highest paid athletes globally was truly stunning, not in a good way. I wouldn't have been surprised if the statistic was not in the top 10, even not in the top 20, but not even in the 100 top highest female athletes. And this includes very famous names such as Venus Williams or Simone Biles. It is truly appalling. Continuing on the example of Ms. Biles, of what the Polish Minister Kotula has said, and the video shown to us by Mrs. Van Snick concerning sexual harassment and sexual abuse in sports. Another statistic given here was that 21% of professional female athletes report having experienced sexual abuse, which is double that of their male counterparts. But keep in mind, as appalling as those numbers are, they only concern professional athletes. The numbers are far worse when we consider that there are those women who have been deterred on their athletic way because they were abused, because they have experienced abuse. The point also made by Mrs. Sheila, saying that although that should not be the case, it unfortunately is the case that the burden of proof is on the victim, is an essential problem in combating this issue. The reason why Mrs. Biles, or even more recently, as mentioned by our Spanish colleagues, Jenny Hermoso, have been successful in combating the violence that they have experienced is because they have come to a position of power due to their enormous success. So now they are deemed credible. And that is a very, very important issue, because unless they are credible, unless they are renowned worldwide, they are not taken seriously. This is something that needs to be combated. Additionally, this can also be treated as sexual harassment in the workplace, and there should be procedures and protocols in place in all the sporting associations, but also in other associations, such as national parliaments and governments and EU institutions, which none of the countries, I'm afraid to say, have at the moment. One shining example that I can provide from Croatia is that the Croatian Olympic Committee has imposed in their newly voted statute a quota of 40% women that need to be in the executive board of this body. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you to yourself, and thank you for your successes in Croatia. Now we go to Romania. Oana Silvia Toiu, the Chamber of Deputies, has the floor. 3 minutes. Where is our Romanian colleague? Over there, I see you. Yes.
Good day, thank you. My name is Oana Toiu. I'm representing the Youth and Sports Committee in the Chamber of Deputies in Romania. It's a freshly formed committee. It only has 3 years, and I'm the first woman member and former chair. As a woman, because we would typically just have men in the committee. Also because Romania, unfortunately, is ranking at a disastrous 125 place in terms of women representation in parliament. So there aren't that many of us generally, not necessarily in this committee. But I come with what I think are good news on the last 3 years in Romania, because as we have formed this dedicated committee, we have managed to pass legislation that makes sure, for example, that local municipal budgets invested in sports are at least a third invested in junior players. And the next step is to make sure that has a gender inclusion to it as well. Another focus we had was on retirement plans for athletes, because that is where we see most of the challenges. And in Romania, as every year in the European Union, women outlive men on an average of 5.5 years, and this is no different in the sports arena. That's why retirement funds are absolutely essential, due to the fact that athletes have different type of contracts and rarely have the proper contributions that will allow them the proper retirement and life quality. So this is another package of laws that we're focused on and very interested in your perspective on it. Some other good news that have happened is that we recently have managed to open up the local infrastructure of schools, for example, in the weekends or in the evening. That's a Union Save Romania initiative that has passed into law. So there is more socializing at the neighborhood and community level, and I fully agree with the speaker's perspective on the role of sports in underprivileged communities. We have seen that in Romania, in Ferentar, with the work of Policy Center for Roma. We've also have seen athletes come to us in the committee, and a lot of women athletes under the umbrella of Go Scholarship, informal committee meetings that have focused their interventions on the lack of career transition, because especially for women, the roles of referees or coaches are a bit less and oftentimes a bit less paid. So the transition to different careers after the performance years is even more important in that direction. And their perspectives were that even when an athlete is a junior athlete, especially a women athlete, there needs to be a counseling, career transition, support, so that the only available jobs afterwards are not just those in sports. And we believe this to be very important for making sure that the gender pay gap is also balanced in sports. Romania, in this perspective, has a very good history. We are in the top 3 in the European Union member states in terms of diminishing the gender gap. But in sports, that is significantly higher, although women's sports in Romania has had these marvelous examples, Nadia Comaneci, Simona Halep, and many others. We still see a difference in compensation throughout their athlete life. And we believe this to be very, very important. We're also typically using different contracts for athletes than labor contracts. So a lot of the protection that the unions or the labor contracts ensure is lacking in this type of contracts, including the, as you've previously mentioned, the sexual harassment laws when it comes to employer-employee relationships. So this is something that we're going to explore throughout March and April in the committee. One of the things that we focus on very much is on the underage athletes. We have a law in Romania, for example, that makes sure that you have a previous sexual offense, then you're not allowed to work with children anymore, but that has only applied to school and hospitals. And our plan by the end of this parliament session is to extend that to sports and working with children and junior athletes in sports as well. And the last message on our side is that we believe, because sports plays such a huge role in social inclusion, but also in mental health care of teenagers, that more focus needs to be directed, and by focus I mean money, in terms of EU funds that can serve these projects with a multitude of beneficiaries, be it schools, sporting clubs, or federations and NGOs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing with us such good practices. And now, last but not least, I would like to give the floor to Alma Alfonso from the Spanish Congress.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. And You have had some fantastic contributions. My name is Alma Alfonso, and I'm a member of the Committee on Equality in the Congress of Deputies in Spain. So, when it comes to female sport, I'd like to address one particular issue. Our spokesperson, Jaime Los Santos, today wrote a very good article talking about the trans law. He talks out about the increase in gender reassignments in the register. We're seeing 400% rise. In the UK, there's been a 5,000% increase. But the PP in Spain is in agreement with having a trans law, but not a law which focuses on women, but one which gives all guarantees. How do you think that we can link trans laws to fairness for women in sport?
And now we get back to the table, and in first place, I would like to give the floor. Each one is going to be for 2 minutes to Pia Sundhage, a Swedish former football player and coach. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's been storytelling. I have listened, and I think this is important to spread the word. What have you heard? What do you bring back home to your places, your country? What are you going to do? I've heard some data, thank you very much, about decision making. We need to do more about the open letter or hashtag it is over. Those things I will carry back home and try to spread the word. Because at the end of the day, we need to change. We need to take the chance to change and change the attitude and move people. Because if we convince people it is a win-win situation, we will have a better society. So take the chance to make the change. Now, that is words. Politics. Politics is something you want to do, and you have a will, and you make the decision. So I think that is one of the most important things. What kind of actions do I have behind my words, or anybody in this room? What kind of actions? Because in the World Cup, hashtag it is over, many came together. And that's the key. And I think it's important to acknowledge the sport. It is an investment of the society. And it comes down to, what you said, come down to those who have the power to really show what they want. We have to remind them to make the position and actually to make the change. We have to remind them. That's the society. I think that's the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next one is Charline Van Snick.
Merci.
Thank you. Well, there was a lot of questions about trans women, and I would like to say that this also is relevant to intersex women. As I said in my introduction, we need to bear in mind that there is no clear line, definitive line between what a man is and what a woman is. It's a spectrum. That's a biological reality. It's very important. When we talk about women in sport and these tests of femininity, women realize that they're not women enough to compete in the women category. I mean, women who went home and their husbands slammed the door in their face because they found out that they had a male gametes, but following these femininity tests, they lost everything. That's reality. I mean, you think you're women enough, Have you already carried out all of the tests to prove that you are woman enough to compete in the women's category? There's no feminism without black women, veiled women, trans women. That's something we need to assert. I mean, this question about men being stronger in sport, well, these tests on testosterone are already being questioned. There's biopsies on men and women's musculature which prove that there is absolutely no difference between a muscle, so-called women's muscle, and men's muscle. We're starting from way far back, but we're still very performing. But today, the differences are reducing, and even in some cases, for example, in endurance sports, women are just as strong or stronger than men. There's no clear line dividing this. So we're not that far off from the performance. And then we talk about equality. Equality, fairness doesn't exist in sport. We are elite athletes. We all have something exceptional. And yet it's only the men who have the right to be aliens. One who's extremely tall, or Michael Phelps, who produces more lactic acid, who has a physiological advantage over the other. Are we going to ask him to take medicines to make sure he's at the same level? Are we going to cut somebody's height to ensure they're the same? I mean, men have the right to these exceptional qualities. Women do not. And that's why we're dealt with the way we are, whether we have more testosterone or a clitoris that's larger than 2 centimeters. I mean, is this real? Trans women they're not stealing the medals from cis women. It's a difficult path. They don't come to sport to steal medals. No, because they want to change. It's because it's their identity. And that is something that I wanted to stress here before you. They're not stealing our medals. It's a long path of sufferance. Let's listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Matilda Gionai is the next speaker.
Yep, thanks a lot. The idea is that, and I wanted to start it when Charline led it, because actually I've mentioned several times the resolution of the Assembly of the year 2022, but there is a recommendation that it has been clearly addressed to all 46 member states in order that all the sports federation ensure full and equal access to the practice of sport to all women, and to this end allow transgender and intersex athletes to train and compete in sports competition consistent with their gender identity. So we have just only to urge our countries, to the federations, just only to implement these recommendations if we want that the athletes or the other women in sports could compete in their gender identity. Second, I've heard even by the other colleagues some of the cases or concerns. The same resolution address the combating gender-based discrimination and gender stereotypes. And one of the paragraph of this resolution is to call the countries, the state members, to abolish discriminatory policies against LGBTI athletes and respect the human rights of female athletes in all their diversity. So the same is even for training and competing in sports competition with their gender identity. Since some international framework, I know that even the directives of EU are in the same standards. We have just only, and I am emphasizing that we have just only to work with our national legal framework in the cases that the acquis or the European Council resolutions are not binary. The third thing that I want to mention is about the concern that have been raised by Belgian colleague about the Istanbul Convention and about the services, supports that has to be given to the women that are victims of all forms of violence. So the Istanbul Convention requires all parties to provide short-term and long-term specialist support for women victims of violence, despite that is psychological counseling, trauma care, legal consulting. So despite which territory it's local or it's covered by the women organizations, so it's covered to the whole territory. Meanwhile, the last thing that I want to share with you, really, I've learned a lot of practices by each of the colleagues from national assemblies, but even from members of the European Parliament, and very good example from Croatia. Really, we have to learn by what you have done in this perspective. And we know very well that how difficult it is to combat discrimination, especially in the fields that are considered as man domains. When I've been elected, I've been appointed as Minister of Justice in Albania, I was the first woman ever in the history of our state to be Minister of Justice. And in the first days, comments were that she is young and she is a woman. Meanwhile, before me, there have been men that have been younger than me in the moment of the appointment. But this is the discrimination that we face in the moment that this kind of fields are considered as men domains. And we have to work a lot for awareness and empowering the women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And the last one is Director Sheila with her comments.
Thank you. Maybe 2 points I would like to touch upon. And this is the call for sport programs for, let's say, citizens in deprived areas. And let me add to that with enough budget, please. Because gender budgeting, it was mentioned before, it's extremely important. I have done gender impact assessments in the past at municipality level of sports policy programs, sports policies, and it was interesting to see that despite the beautiful words in those documents, there was no budget for the targeted groups. And then it's lip service, because you can't implement those policies if you don't have the proper budget. So gender budgeting, together with gender impact assessment, is extremely important. And then there was this question about what can we do as sports federations or what can we do as parliaments. Maybe to stress again what has been said throughout this whole panel, that it starts with awareness raising, that gender-based violence and discrimination and harassment is taking place in whatever entity we have. There's a lot of denial. I've also heard, for example, employers say, oh, in my company, no, there's no discrimination at all. And no, we have no problems with LGBTI discrimination. I said, but maybe it's because people don't step forward. They have to feel safe. So it starts with awareness raising that this is everywhere, throughout the planet, in all areas of life, so also in our own organizations. And then it's important to have the appropriate systems in place. For example, confidential counselors. But even if you have those, they should be specifically trained to be able to deal with these issues. And then the third point is there should be proper follow-up. Because we have heard today, it takes such a courage to step forward, especially if you're in a power disimbalanced position. It takes courage, imagine, to step forward and to tell such a narrative that you have been victim of harassment in a place that should be safe for you. So please, we don't need to fix the women. We need to fix the systems. And let that be my last words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director, and thank you very much to all the distinguished great speakers today. On this side and on this side, we had a very fruitful exchange of views on women in sports. And the slogan of this International Women's Day meeting was, women get only a fraction of the visibility in sports. And I have a feeling that today, at least in this room, in these premises, we widely open the window to have more visibility for women in sports. And the message is very strong from this meeting. We have a lot of words, but now we need more actions in this field. And the ideas were placed by you, dear colleagues of the distinguished national parliaments, by my colleagues from European Parliament, and especially also by our distinguished guests who are such a great inspiration to all of us, and thank you for being with us. We have job to do. We see how much work needs to be done to deliver. We as European Parliament, this 9th term of European Parliament in the field of women's rights and gender equality was very productive on different fields, and I hope that after the next elections to European Parliament, our colleagues who will take over from us this work will also be productive and deliver more equality, more security for all, including girls and women. Thank you very much for your participation. I wish you good luck with everything. And keep fingers crossed for your work done in the parliaments all over Europe. Just to inform you, and this is an award we have, it's a lunch. The lunch was to be at 12:30, but it's ready, I was informed, and is in room 3Q, 3rd floor, waiting for you. So directly after this meeting, we can join the lunch. And what the last request is, I propose that we take a family picture to commemorate this great meeting. So if you can all approach here and stand over here and here on 2 levels, that we will take the picture from there. So please, colleagues, thank you very much. Thank you to interpreters. Thank you to secretariats. Thank you to administration for organizing this meeting. And I consider this interparliamentary committee meeting closed. Thank you very much.